All righty, thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon. I'm meteorologist Taylor Cox. Joined with me once again, CEO of Hail Trace, Derek Klein. Derek, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Glad to be here. We've got a lot of weather to talk about.
Lots of weather to talk about. Yesterday, we had that big hailstorm over Edmond and Oklahoma City. We even had some hail come into DFW. And of course, the constant conversation over the last few days, and especially today, has now been Hurricane Helene, which is expected to make landfall tomorrow. The National Hurricane Center now has this at a Category 4 at landfall. Derek, I know you've got a lot of information for us. So I'm just going to go ahead and start with you kicking it off. Here's your screen. Tell us what we can expect from this hurricane over the next 36 hours here.
Well, it's going to come in quick, and that's one of the things that's different than some of the last few storms. This hurricane is going to be moving. I mean, for example, where it's at now, it will be on land in the U.S. 24 hours ish from right now. So give or take an hour. So it's going to be on the Florida coastline by this time tomorrow. So that's how fast it's moving. Because it's moving so fast, it's also going to carry the high winds very far inland. I think I was telling you earlier, Taylor, I wouldn't be shocked if this is still close to a hurricane, if not a hurricane, by the time it gets to Atlanta, Georgia. How about that? When was the last time you saw a hurricane near Atlanta, Georgia?
Never.
Right. So this is going to be a historic Helene. If we want to try to mince words there and try to mix them up. And it's really starting to undergo its intensification now as well. So what we're looking at here is we've got an infrared satellite. I'm going to switch it over to a visible satellite just to give you a little bit different viewpoint. And we now have thunderstorms developing all around the center. You can see kind of the spiral banding. So we have the Hurricane Hunter flying through here, and I'm going to back this up so you can kind of see the path he's taking. Look, it's really cool to watch this. So you can see him kind of, as he gets close to the storm, he starts to, essentially what they do is they have this little tube in the back of the plane, and they drop these little sensors through this tube. So there's actually, the plane is open. So imagine you are flying into a hurricane, and you've got an opening in your plane, and they're dropping these little, they're called dropsons. They're dropping them through the plane, down, and then they kind of fall down, and then they're sending weather readings back to us as they go through. And so, in fact, you can actually see how often they drop them. I'm going to zoom in here. I zoomed in too close. Here, let's see if we can find them. There you go. So each one of these dots is a drop. And so they're dropping one for each one of these dots. And they're color-coded by wind speed. So the green is actually a stronger wind speed. Now it says, so temperature and dew point is questionable in this, but it had a max surface wind speed of 50 knots at this location. That would equate to about 60 miles per hour. So it's pretty strong winds, even at that location. This one had 50 knots. But as they continue to move forward, you can see we've got some more green dots that show up here, 50 knots, 50 knots, 50 again. Well, we're getting 50 is a popular number here. And they're kind of all staying green here. I'm pretty sure eventually these go up. I know they do go up. There's 51, 51, 50. And notice the pressure is also dropping. So as they get closer, so we're down to 986 millibars. Now the latest update came out at 85 mile per hour sustained winds. It's about 75 knots. And it had it at 978. So I'm kind of curious as it flies into there, what kind of pressure does it actually find, or do they actually find? There's a 51 knot again. So as they kind of start to fly, and you'll see him make a turn here. As he turns and tries to, you can see the center now on his radar that he has on the plane. So he kind of turns to the right, and he begins to fly towards the center. So we're down to 977 in this dropson. Notice we have some clearing, meaning we've got an eye, right, that we're looking at here. And he kind of turns, does a really sharp right turn there. Whoop. And then I hit the play button and ruined it all. There we go. So he flies all the way through, and so he finds 974. And what I find interesting is the wind was 28 knots. That means he wasn't in the center. He was close, but he wasn't in the center. The center will have winds less than 28 knots. So I would expect to see winds around 10 knots when he gets to that center location. So the pressure might actually be lower than 974 in Hurricane Helene right now. But they updated it at 978. So it's actually dropped since they've updated it already to 978. And then our max wind speed that they've seen, 63 knots, which is about 75 to 80 miles per hour. They're anticipating, they've obviously only done one dissection of this hurricane. I expect there'll probably be some higher winds back here to the southwest. And then I think stronger winds are going to develop up here to the northwest as it continues to organize and intensify. But if we play this loop here, you should be able to kind of see, you can see it really, we've got to let it load in here, but you'll really be able to see it spin. And you can notice we also have some radar in there, and you can see the flight panning through this hurricane here, and eventually he'll turn around and he'll go do another pass right through the center of the hurricane. But really, really intensifying, became a hurricane just off the coast of really near Isla Mujeres, which is near Cancun. So about 30 or 40 miles off the coast there of Mexico. And it's really picking up its pace now as well. So storm speed really starting to pick up.
And yeah, you can definitely see the flight path there. One thing that we've talked about before that we can mention again is that whenever the hurricane hunters fly in this hurricane, they're flying with the pressure. So as the pressure is dropping, they're also dropping, and then they're going back up. And so it's almost like the filling of a cake, or is it an angel food cake that's got a hole in the middle of it missing? King's
that's
cake,
the one.
maybe.
That's the one. Yeah.
And they fly just like that over the hurricane. I think that's absolutely fascinating that they go just right into it.
Yep, just keep dropping all the way down. So, so it's I think they want to fly at 700 or 750 millibars is kind of where their instructions are to fly. But it's definitely a bumpy ride. It's not a smooth ride at all, and probably not a fun ride. But I think I want to do it. So
I would love to do that. Absolutely. If they need someone to capture video for a ride along, we've got it. Derek, you and I can do that.
They're watching us right now live in the plane. So if you're watching, we want to go for a ride. So
I know they're watching. Absolutely.
Yeah, they have to be. This is the best out there. So it doesn't get any better.
Well, and they're giving us absolutely critical data because, yeah, even after that update 15 minutes ago, we've got brand new information now telling us about the pressure of this hurricane. And the lower the pressure, for those of you who are not weather nerds like us out there, the lower the pressure, the more intense that hurricane is. And hurricane category is based on wind speed, but the pressure can still tell us so much about that hurricane and the intensity of it. Now, I see we've got the National Hurricane Center pulled up now. We've got some flooding. Is this shear as well?
I'm bouncing around here, so let's jump into it. So here's the so I kind of went to my web browser here where I've got several pages pulled up here, so we can kind of take a look at it here. I was hoping that they would post their new so they have a new product that actually puts the warnings, the inland watch and warnings. We'll just jump over and take a look at them. On the National Weather Service, but currently here's our forecasted path, and you can see really just kind of making landfall there at the Big Bend, just to the east of Panama City. For those of you unfamiliar with that area, they do have it now as a Category 4 hurricane. So this MDOT at 1 p.m. on Thursday is a Category 4. Again, you see it's a Category 1 hurricane still in the center of Georgia. Again, I said Atlanta's right up here. It's going to be approaching Atlanta around 3 or 4 in the morning. They're going to hear some trees cracking and some power going out, and it's going to be a rough night in Atlanta, Georgia, on Friday morning. Let me tell you, it's not going to be a fun evening. I mean, look at this. It's still a tropical storm over Nashville, Tennessee. How about that? When was the last time you saw a tropical storm in Nashville, Tennessee? So. That's how
far inland
this thing is moving. Yeah.
absolutely fascinating. And I mean, for those of you in the Southeast or even in Oklahoma, we're used to tornadoes here, but it's not just one strong wind gust that may last for 5-10 minutes. This is lasting for hours and hours and hours that you have these really strong wind gusts.
Yeah, and the size of it is really something that's kind of special about this hurricane too. So notice we have hurricane warnings all the way down to near Tampa. This is going to be 150 miles away from Tampa. So that's really, really big as well. And the size is actually what's going to cause some of the storm surge issues. So if we look at peak storm surge, when you look at this, 12 to 18 feet. Imagine
Wow.
that. Like that's 18 feet from sea level above.
Wow.
That is absolutely massive. And even all the way down into Tampa, look at that, 5 to 8 feet above sea level in Tampa Bay.
That max wind surge. That max wind surge is 3 times the size of the average person. I mean, yeah, that's a lot of water.
Yeah, and that part of that is, I mean, obviously the strength. We're now forecasting a Category 4 landfall and hurricane, so that's one piece of this puzzle. But the other side of that is the size of the hurricane. A lot of people don't remember with Katrina. When Katrina made landfall, it had 22-foot storm surge was the storm surge measured on Katrina, but Katrina was a Cat 3 when it made landfall. The reason why the storm surge was so large with Katrina was the size. It was a massive hurricane. And so the size of Katrina is what really led to Katrina being such a catastrophic hurricane in New Orleans. Same thing here. Now we're not under sea level, so the water's not going to come as far inland as it would have if it were a Katrina over New Orleans or something like that. But this is just a massive, I mean, look, it's going to draw water in all the way up to Savannah, Georgia, to really almost Myrtle Beach. So imagine that. We're going to have 1 to 3 foot storm surge all the way up to Myrtle Beach. It's going to be drawing water in. So, that's not a big storm surge, but it's going to be impacting weather that far away.
Yeah, but it's a big hurricane that stretches so wide. It doesn't just go where the eye is. It stretches so wide that we have storm surge on the other side of the coast.
Yeah, and I'm gonna try to show you what that looks like here. So I'm gonna go back to my screen that has the Hurricane Hunter flying through here, and I'm gonna zoom out. And so this will kind of show you just how big. So you can see the dots here. This is how strong I think the hurricane. So a Category 2 here in about 9 hours, and then a Category 4 in 20 hours. And then you can see the hurricane force winds. So zoom in up here. So that's the purple area right here. So the hurricane force winds really confined right here to like Albany, Georgia, potentially over here to, let's see, was this Eufaula? Is this Eufaula? I think that's, Eufaula. And then again, this is moving up towards Atlanta. You see we got some tornado warnings up here north of Atlanta right now. So the weather's already bad up there. But look at the tropical storm force winds way out here off the coast. So we're going to be drawing tropical storm force winds all across the whole state of Florida, all the way up into South Carolina. And then those are going to continue. And still, these are sustained. These are not gusts. Sustained tropical storm force winds all the way up here to near Nashville, Tennessee, up near Cookeville into southern Kentucky. But they'll be gusts. And that's something that's interesting. The gusts, tropical storm force gusts, are going to come all the way up into Indiana. This is going to be a wide path of tree damage and power lines out, and which is why I think this is going to go down in the history books as a pretty special hurricane. I don't know if I could call it special, but it's going to do some things that other hurricanes that we're used to haven't done.
Yeah. And these are also people that are not used to preparing for hurricanes either. Severe weather, sure, but you go farther down to the south, they're used to this preparation for a hurricane. You go farther up to the north, they're not used to this preparation for these really strong storms that are going to last a long time. So I am kind of interested in the social aspect of that as well. Are people ready? Are people ready to take those preparations? I think that'll be a really interesting thing. I hope that they're heeding these warnings, and anyone who's out there, make sure that you send these to your friends that are living in these areas that definitely need to take their preparations.
Well, I said, let's take a look at the inland watch and warnings here. So we'll We'll do that here. Well, I don't need the dual pole. This is how to read dual pole radar if anybody's wondering how to do that. Okay, so yeah, so we've now been upgraded to tropical storm warnings all the way up to Georgia into North Carolina. Now, I'm kind of curious here. So one thing, and it's kind of hard to see on here. So if you notice, the tropical storm warnings, they end right on the Tennessee state line. Even though we're going to have a tropical storm in Tennessee, they're not issuing advisories. I'm curious, that might be a state level thing where they don't actually issue advisories for tropical storms in Tennessee because they're an inland state. So just goes to show you how rare this is. They don't even have the ability to issue a tropical storm warning. But what you'll see is you'll actually, we're going to see a high wind watch and high wind warnings will be issued because that's what we issue inland for non-severe weather, but just really high winds with rain. So we should see those. And I think I wouldn't be surprised to see those again go all the way up into Indiana. And I found this product I thought was really interesting. So this is windy.com. If you haven't ever been to it, it's got some pretty cool pieces to it. But I found this product here. I'm going to go ahead and put it on here. So this is wind accumulation. So it's actually going to measure the peak. Now this is sustained winds. So this isn't wind gusts. So the wind gusts should be higher. But we can actually pull this out and see just how far. So if we go through the end of Friday, look at the high winds. And again, this is based off of a particular model, just where the track is. We can actually switch the model to see that track change. So I would expect, again, a little bit further easterly component here, or westerly component to the high winds. So Atlanta, expect high winds. Tallahassee, I think you're going to get wrecked if you're in Tallahassee. But on the current track, Tallahassee should see winds well over 100 miles an hour. Atlanta, Georgia, I think you'll see winds up in the 90 mile per hour range. Knoxville, I think you'll see winds in the 60 to 70 mile per hour range. And look at these wind gusts. They come all the way up into Indianapolis up here. So this is, let's see here if I can see on the scale here. That's winds 40 to 50 miles per hour, all the way up into Indiana, into Ohio, into Illinois. So this is a big system, and it's going to stretch really far inland. So a lot of impacts coming from this particular system.
That's very interesting. I'm thinking about the all the trees that are going to be down. Of course, with that comes power lines down as well. I'm very grateful that we had that bit of a cool down last week so that people won't rely on their AC as much, but it's still warm. I mean, 70s, 80s, we still need AC. So I am kind of thinking about the impacts that are going to pile up on this, not just the flooding impact, the trees down, the power lines down, but also then you are without AC for several days, possibly. So I think there's going to be a lot of people impacted in a lot of different ways here.
Yeah, I think you're going to see, again, power outages in the Florida Panhandle, really up all the way down to Tampa. Honestly, I think you'll have power outages, and they're going to be in the catastrophic range. In that ballpark of where we don't get power back in a few hours. This is going to be a few weeks without power in a lot of areas in Florida, and I think you're going to see that stretch into Georgia as well. So we're going to see, places like Albany, potentially all the way up to Atlanta, where the power grid is going to be stressed so much that they're just not going to be able to get it turned back on very quickly. So I think, rural areas, you're going to see several weeks all the way up into Georgia, South Carolina, potentially even North Carolina and Tennessee. And then, we're going to see, downtown Atlanta, I'm sure they'll get power back fairly quickly, but, you could go 12, 24 hours even in Atlanta, maybe even longer than that in some areas. This is, like I said, this will be, if we want to talk dollar amounts, insurance claims, that's one way to look at this hurricane. This is going to be $100 billion hurricane at least. So think about that. And it might even make a run at 150 billion. So the big numbers we're talking about with this hurricane.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is going to make records in many different ways. I've also seen, we were talking about the size earlier. I've also seen this compared to some of the biggest in size hurricanes that we have seen in the past. I think this is going to hit some of those top 10, top 15 at least, biggest hurricane that we've seen.
Yeah, it's up there. It's a very, very large hurricane. Like I said, to be having, to not even make landfall on the peninsula of Florida, to make landfall on the Panhandle, but yet produce tropical storm force winds all the way up into South Carolina coastline. That's massive. That's a big pull. Big strong low pressure for sure.
And I don't know if we said this earlier, the reason that we are seeing the intense storm farther up to the north into places like Indianapolis, is because of how fast it's moving. I don't know if we said that earlier or not, but that does give
Yes.
some reasoning why we're seeing this go so far north.
Yeah, it should be moving off to the north. Again, kind of turns back to the northwest. But it's going to be moving at a clip probably close to, if not over 30 miles an hour. Most tropical systems are in the 10-mile-per-hour range. Now, this all is because of influence of a tropical or of a big trough of low pressure. It's actually what's causing this rain right now in Georgia. A lot of flash flood warnings in Georgia and Tennessee and in North Carolina right now, too. We've got tornado warnings in West Virginia from this trough. Obviously, this trough caused the big hail in Oklahoma and Texas yesterday. So this trough of low pressure is actually what's going to grab this system and really pull it off to the north. In fact, I think I have, let's see if I can find it here. So if we kind of zoom out here, turn some stuff off. So you can actually see how it all forms, right? So we've got this high pressure, and you can see how the wind is kind of comes across, and then it's basically blocking. So what Helene wants to do is it wants to curve and go with the westerlies, and so it wants to curve and go over here to the Atlantic Ocean. But we've got this this ridge of high pressure that extends all the way down the east coast, and it's blocking Helene right here. But then we've got this trough right here, and then this ridge of high pressure here, and so it's being squeezed right up through this channel, and so that's why the peninsula is not going to get hit. But you can see right here the Panhandle, the way this flow works, it says, yeah, just come right up here into the Panhandle. And then it wants to pull it back to the west as we have this low pressure from this particular trough right here has formed a low pressure. And so that's actually going to swing it back around that low pressure. It's called the Fujiwara effect. Seen a lot of that. So it's going to pull it and swing it back around and then absorb it into the trough. And then eventually it will move off to the west across the northeast of the United States. It's a much weaker system at that point, just kind of rain and storms, and will be more of your typical low pressure. We'll have a cold front, a warm front, and all that fun stuff. So, but you can almost kind of picture why it's being pulled into the Florida Panhandle when you look at this map. Because you can see that block right here, the block right here, and it's causing everything to funnel up, being pulled right up into the Florida Panhandle.
Yeah, well, and I think that we've seen a lot on social media about the Fujiwara effect, but then you look in a few days out from now, we're going to see a lot of rainfall anywhere from Tennessee to Kentucky, portions of eastern Missouri, Arkansas, just a ton of rain from this system, not having anywhere to go, as you mentioned, and sitting right over that area through the weekend.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can see 3 days, 3 days of the Appalachian Mountains are in the moderate risk for flooding. So today, you get a lot of flooding up there today. Tomorrow because of Helene, and then the same thing on Saturday will also be because of Helene. So, just a lot going on with this system. And you can see it stretches all the way back to almost Little Rock, Arkansas, through Evansville, Louisville, Cape Girardeau, Roanoke, Charlotte, North Carolina, down to Savannah, down to Jacksonville, Tampa Bay, Florida. I mean, it's the list is endless. I mean, there's millions and millions and millions of people being impacted by this system.
What are we talking about in terms of rainfall totals here, numbers? We see the pinks on the board here. That is for excessive rainfall. That's for the flooding potential. And that pink level, that is a level 4 out of 4. That is very rarely issued. But what are we talking about numbers here? How much rainfall are they actually getting over this 3-day period?
Yeah, so let's take a look at it here. We'll see if we can get this website to load here. But it's definitely so you get the initial surge of rainfall when the system actually makes landfall, and it's super heavy tropical rain when it makes that initial landfall. But then after it makes the landfall, what we're going to see is it's going to be quick. So you're going to squeeze out the heaviest rain up against the mountains. So the mountains are going to create additional lift and additional heavy rainfall, and then that rainfall will just kind of set right on that location. But then what we're going to see is we're going to see it bend back to the west, and then slow down and stall along a frontal boundary. And so we'll see that also produce additional rainfall. So we're going to see it in 3 different spots where the initial landfall has really, really heavy rain and lots of flooding. And then we're going to see the Appalachian Mountains create extra lift, which is going to cause extra flooding. And then we're going to see additional rainfall because it slows down when it merges in with the tropical pressure. So as we kind of pull forward here, you can see, and again, you kind of see it right there. You see the two locations that we talked about. Here's the Appalachian Mountains creating the extra lift, 7 inches of rain right here. So far, this is 1 o'clock tomorrow. So it hasn't even made landfall yet. We're already up to 7-8 inches of rain. Down here on the coast of Florida, we're already up to 9 inches of rain. It's making landfall again about this time. And then we see it bend back to the west and then slow down, and then we see it kind of pull up again in that second pocket right there. So you've got this pocket here, and again, track is gonna determine some different outcomes for this. But look at this. So you've got an area over here of 6 to 7 inches of rain right on the Mississippi River, the Ohio River here coming out of Kentucky. So lots of heavy rain there. And look at some of these totals: 13, a foot of rain. How about that? They're used to a foot of snow up in the Smoky Mountains up here in the Appalachians, but not a foot of rain. And this goes all the way down to Atlanta, 10 inches of rain in Atlanta. And then we'll have about a foot of rain here on the coast as well. So, and anybody that's in the yellow, that's 4 to 5 inches of rain if you're in yellow on this map. So just some incredible, we've seen worse from hurricanes. We've seen 50, 60 inches of rain from hurricanes in Houston. So it's not, this isn't a historic amount of rain from hurricanes, but it's a lot of rain. When you couple that with the high winds and how far inland they're going to come, they're going to soften the ground up. So you're going to see big trees coming down, lots of stuff from that as well.
I also think with the topography of this, you've got a lot of runoff most likely with this. So those lower elevations are going to see even more water accumulating, even though, you may get 10, 12 inches of rain, but then you get all of that water that's coming down from the mountain. So I'm kind of wondering if the flooding will be isolated to these areas that are at lower elevations, but then almost...
Well, think about the flash flooding too,
worse.
As that water just comes rushing out of the mountains down into the valleys. The flash flooding is going to be, probably going to see some pretty wild videos of rushing water.
Just rivers created where rivers weren't there anymore for several hours. We're just going to see that rushing water. Yeah, I definitely think that's something that we're going to see.
Yeah, it's going to be wild for sure. So
I've been looking at.
Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to remind everyone, if you do have any questions, stick that in the comments section, because I've been looking at some of our comments here in Facebook and X and YouTube. So if we have any questions, we've got about 5 more minutes. Stick that in the comments section here.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you have any questions, for sure, shoot those in the comments. I think we, kind of trying to cover everything, but if I were to, I'm going to switch back here to our viewpoint of the hurricane hunter flying through. He's made his turnaround, so he's coming back around now. It'll be a little while before he gets back to the center, but you can see he's made the corner now, and he's coming back to the north. He'll actually fly up all the way up here to the northwest of it, and then he'll pivot and come back down to the southwest. But I'm going to use this map as just kind of some what to expect in some of these locations. So we're going to start all the way down here by Cape Coral, Fort Myers, So what to expect in Cape Coral, Fort Myers? Well, you're going to get a couple inches of rain. You're going to see some squalls. I think the worst tornado threat will probably be further north, but there could be some isolated tornadoes. Expect wind speeds in the 30 to 40 to maybe some gusts close to 50 miles an hour, 55, somewhere right in there. And then expect around 2 to 4 feet of storm surge. So pretty good storm surge, not epic, but definitely some pretty good storm surge. As we get up here to Tampa, expect wind speeds in the probably 70 to 80 on gusts. That definitely wouldn't be surprised to see some 70 or 80 mile per hour gusts come in from Tampa. Storm surge 3 to 5 feet, 6, 7 feet even. So some pretty big storm surge in Tampa. And again, lots of rain, several inches of rain will fall in the Tampa area. Orlando, if you're in Disney World, it's not, you're going to have impacts from this. It's not going to be as crazy. Obviously, no storm surge or inland, but expect winds in the 40 mile per hour range in Orlando. Maybe some gusts close to 50. In fact, there you go. There's a gust of 40 already off the coast there. As you get up here to the north, we're going to see it even more. So as we get up here to the north, we're going to see, landfall is going to make really, really close here to Apalachicola. You're going to see winds probably 130 miles an hour there. So just crazy. The storm surge, though, going to be on the left side of the eye. So the storm surge probably closer to 2 to 4 feet. So a little bit lower storm surge, but just epic amounts of damage and wind from this. And again, 10 inches of rain. Tallahassee, 10 inches of rain, winds around 100 to 120 miles per hour. Yeah, 120 mile per hour winds through Tallahassee. There's going to be a lot of damage in Tallahassee. And then as you move off to the north, get up here to Atlanta, I expect winds 70 to 80 miles an hour, maybe even 90 miles an hour in Atlanta, Georgia. It's going to take a lot of power lines down, a lot of trees down, and that's going to extend all the way up here into Greenville. Expect wind gusts 60 miles an hour in Greenville, maybe even Charlotte. Asheville, winds 60 to 70 miles per hour. You got a little bit of elevation. Expect 12 to 15 inches of rain in Asheville. So lots of rain coming through. Chattanooga, 60 to 70 mile per hour winds. Nashville, 50 to 60, maybe 65 mile per hour winds. Lexington, Kentucky, how about this? 60 mile per hour winds possible in Lexington and Louisville, Kentucky. That's just how big of an impact this is going to have on this area. So this is going to be a big event. This will be one that we'll be talking about at the end of the year, at the New Year's. The New Year's, as we look back on 2024, this will be one that we'll look back on and remember.
That is a giant chunk that's going to be impacted by just the straight line winds or the hurricane force winds, tropical storm winds. There you go. The strong wind speeds and flooding and storm surge, all of that. I think one thing that you mentioned earlier that we haven't really hit too much on is the tornado risk here, because oftentimes the Storm Prediction Center will issue that slight risk, that level 2 risk. But for this hurricane in particular, these outer bands, they've got a level 3 risk, that enhanced risk on the eastern side of Georgia, even southern portion of South Carolina. So already 24 hours out, they're already expecting that tornado risk to be more impressive than other hurricanes that we've seen over the last year.
Charleston, Savannah, Brunswick, that area, look out tomorrow, because these tornadoes, again, they'll be moving at 50, 60 miles an hour, maybe faster than that. Some of them maybe 70. They won't be, they won't last very long, and they won't be super strong, but you can still get F2s. So they can still be pretty wild tornadoes.
Yeah, absolutely. We do have one question on here, which I think is a question that we get pretty often. Mark Porter asks, will this lead to hail? Now, that is something we hear all the time with the hurricane. Are we going to see hail out of this?
Yeah, we definitely get asked that question quite a lot. So hurricanes are warm core systems. That means they feed off of warm air. And so they actually, so while they do, which is interesting, they do produce ice at a very, very high elevation. It's very small pieces of ice that they produce, and they melt it very quickly. So it's, in fact, if you're ever in a hurricane, the raindrops are like bathwater. They're like in the low 80s. They actually feel pretty good. So it's you don't get cold in a hurricane. So no hail. Now it could produce hail when it merges in with the trough and it forms into more of a typical low pressure. But it won't be a hurricane or a tropical system at that point anymore. So we'll have to watch for that. Maybe we could get some hail as we get into like day 4, day 5, somewhere right in there. That's a little too far out to kind of figure out how it's going to merge in with this trough of low pressure.
Yeah, great question. That's something that we get all the time. I just looked on the Storm Prediction Center's page to see if they have issued anything about severe weather on day 4, day 5. They haven't yet, but we'll be watching that in case they do.
Yeah, and just to put that into perspective, they didn't have anything on day 4 and 5 for yesterday in Oklahoma or Texas. So, and we had a potentially $1 billion hailstorm yesterday. So that doesn't mean a lot. It's hard to forecast how far out.
Especially this time of year. It's really difficult this time of year, but they didn't even have that slight risk until like lunchtime, 11:30
right
ish. Yeah. And then they upgraded that hail risk.
And it wasn't hatched, I don't think either, was it?
I don't think so. I didn't see it hatched at least.
Yeah.
Unless I missed something.
Yeah.
And then there we are with baseball sized hail for 10, 15 minutes.
30 minutes. Yeah, it was a crazy storm.
Oh, a crazy storm. But for everyone watching out there, we do have pictures and videos, and I think maybe even a map on social media if you are curious about that storm. If we have any more questions about the hurricane, I'm going to go back through some of our social media here, make sure I didn't miss anything. But I know we've got to let you go, Derek. Any final thoughts or any final words or forecasts on this hurricane before we let you go here?
No, I mean, by this time tomorrow, it will be making or it will have already made landfall. That's how fast it's going to be moving. I expect landfall as a Category 4 hurricane. We talked about this 2 days ago. It was going to intensify at a very quick pace. Expect it to be probably stronger than forecasted. And that's where we're at right now. I expect to see, pressure drop and this to be a Category 2, potentially by the time we go to bed tonight. Maybe a little bit later than that, and then should wake up tomorrow morning to probably Helene looking at us with her eye. And we'll watch that traverse quickly across the Gulf and into the Florida Panhandle. And then again, by midnight tomorrow night, it's going to be nearing Atlanta, Georgia. So, and again, wild weather all the way up into the Ohio Valley.
And this is going to move really fast. But okay, well, we appreciate you jumping on here today, Derek. We thank you for your time. I know as you're traveling, you're still keeping an eye out for us with this hurricane. We of course will do more updates with this hurricane over the next 24 or 36 hours here. So make sure that you are following Hail Trace. Hit that follow button so you know exactly whenever we do our updates. We usually do them right around 4 o'clock every day, but if that changes, we'll make sure to post that either on our social media or on our stories. Thanks for joining us on this Wednesday afternoon.